Psychology project, I decided to do the psychology behind a killer. Ted Bundy. Add 1 digit to that and you'll have it. Theodore Robert Bundy killed the majority of his victims between 1974 and 1978. However, it is believed he may have killed his first victim at only 14 years old. Most believe he killed over 100 women, yet only confessed to killing 30. He lured many innocent women in by using his trustworthy and attractive demeanor. He became an expert at projecting himself as something different. When Bundy was tried and interviewed, he never took the blame. He referred to himself in the third person, allowing himself to never take on the blame. He used 3 of the 5 neutralizations. The first one he used was denial of responsibility. He often blamed alcohol and said when drinking, things would get out of hand. He said that many boys and men came across pornography and are influenced by the media violence and are not monsters, referring to himself. Later saying this porn caused him to commit these heinous acts. He then used denial of the victim by saying his victims deserved it, and he placed the blame on them. Finally, he used condemnation of the condemners, and by doing this, he claimed that the detectives on his case were incompetent, and it was all their fault. A copycat crime is a murder that has been modeled, motivated, and/or inspired by a real-life murder or one that has been in the media or based on a book or film murder. Although these murderers are motivated, they also already have a criminal record and/or mental illness. They also suffer from other psychological disorders, such as personality disorder. They usually come from a dysfunctional family background, are emotionally vulnerable, and entrust the media too much. Many also suffer from depersonalization, which happens when many copycat killers have an inhibition against killing, and then they adopt the persona of the killer they copy, and therefore it seemingly makes killing okay. There is no systematic way to identify copycat crimes, making them much more difficult to identify. And in order to identify them, there must be a link between the media and the crimes themselves. Copycat killer Rurik Judding has very similar tendencies to American Psycho's Patrick Bateman, making his case easier to identify. It is also shown that men are more likely to be copycat killers, and because they are so easily influenced by the media, they are usually younger than 30. The path to murder doesn't just begin one day. Individuals that are killed sometimes are motivated by one singular event or a combination of events or psychological disorders. The motivation for a murder truly only lies within the killer themselves. Their own personal society is the answer to how they can repeatedly kill. Frederick Walter Stephen, or Fred West, was seemingly a young boy turned to a murderer. It was while he was employed as an ice cream truck driver he grew a fascination with young girls. He later had a young boy with his van and killed him. He was uncharged in the courts and left this place of work. He then moved to a slaughterhouse, where he developed a fascination with corpses and dismemberment. He later sought out young women and girls, engaging in sexual activities with them. One of these girls was Anna McFall, who was impregnated. West later murdered her, dismembered her body, and took her fingers and toes as trophies. Often drove in search of his victims and enticed them, seeming like a totally ordinary man. This seems to be a common trend among killers. These acts seem to begin when he was young and may have been learned after years of watching his father engage in inappropriate acts. The Menendez brothers. He was sitting in front of me, dead. Dr. Lenore Walker says in most cases, when children kill their parents, it is because there is too much control exerted over them, and they are therefore robbed of their own identity, and in most cases, there is some sort of physical abuse. As Lyle and Eric grew up, their father was involved and took great interest in their lives, but sometimes they went a little too far. Dr. Walker said the situation seemed like a constant power struggle. Lyle and Eric grew up wealthy and had no need for money, but it was not enough of a thrill for them. They took to burglaries with a group of friends merely for the thrill, not the money. Many believed Eric headed the break-ins, and people say that he was becoming more confident and rebellious. However, Jose did not blame Eric alone. Rather, he worried more about the friends he was surrounded by. Dr. L. Jerome Ozell was a psychologist for Lyle and Eric since they were young, and any conversation between a psychologist and his patients is held confidential. However, there was a ruling only a few years back that Ozell could testify against the brothers because they had allegedly threatened him. As he testified against the brothers in court, Lyle showed disbelief and Eric showed no emotion. Lyle and Eric had decided to kill their father and mother, Jose and Kitty Menendez. Eric entered the room first and began, while Lyle finished the job. Prosecutors say the brothers sought to kill their parents to claim their family fortune, just as Jose was in the process of drafting a new will that would completely rid the boys of their inheritance. Defense lawyers claim the murder was an act of self-defense after years of physical, mental, and sexual abuse. Both boys say they have been sexually abused by their father for years, and their mother would do nothing about it, only teach them how to properly wipe away tears. The original plan was only to kill Jose, who the boys said was dominating and negative. They said that seeing him so helpless gave them a great amount of revenge. Immediately after the shootings, the brothers picked up the shotgun casings scattered around the room, then changed their bloody clothes and dumped them into a trash bin. They then drove to Mulholland Drive, where Eric hid the shotguns 250 feet down a hill. Almost immediately after questioning and the killings, the brothers' behavior began to attract attention of the police. Lyle went on a shopping spree, buying several $1,000s worth of clothes, and was later seen in a limousine with a bodyguard. A few weeks after the death of his parents, he bought a $64,000 special edition Porsche. A friend who had asked Lyle how he was feeling was very surprised to hear his answer. Well, I've been waiting so long to be in a position like this that the transition came easy. Lyle had spent about $700,000 in the first weeks after his parents were killed. A relative put this figure closer to $500,000, but whatever the amount, it included a Porsche, a Rolex watch, as much as $40,000 in clothes, and a Princeton cafe. When asked about the purchases, Lyle said he just likes quality things. It also spiked the police's attention when Lyle made a trip home from Princeton to wipe something off the family computer. The distress of killing. If there are other factors in place that justify a killing, the distress on the killer is reduced. If there's social validation, there is a decrease in stress, but if there is invalidation, the amount of stress automatically goes up. There is little to no change in the amount of distress after a killing if there is some kind of validation, but if there is any invalidation, there is automatically less distress. Killing will lead to distress, partly due to a violation of moral standards. If a social consensus shapes the right and wrong, then this validation may ease the distress. A killer will make them the us in the situation, and in order to make the killing easier, they make the enemy an it, almost like killing a bug. This leads to a moral disengagement and makes the killing easier. In the bug killing experiment, the invalidation group was a group who believed that killing was wrong and refused to complete the study on moral grounds. The validation group was a group who readily agreed to participate in the experiment. The control group was given no information concerning the social acceptance of their actions. There was little to no difference between the invalidation and the control group. There were many methods used to find the reasons behind the murders, and it is through this research that there have been three consistent types of sexual killers. One is motivated by anger, hate, and revenge. One is motivated by a need to satisfy a sexual desire, and there is one who needs to kill for an instrumental reason, such as to silence a witness. These killers were later diagnosed with a mental disorder which was taken into account at the time of their trials, therefore allowing most of them to only be charged with manslaughter rather than murder. Avenging sexual abuse. Unexpected environmental triggers are usually what initiates the homicidal violence. These triggers evoke traumatic memories associated with abuse or bring them back to a symbolic figure. The participant in this study killed people because he suffered years of sexual abuse from his father and brother. Homicidal impulse. In most cases, the participant in this study seemed to manifest the experience by complaining of headaches and nausea just before the killing. A sense of anxiety was also present, but there was no way not to kill. It was almost as if they had to do it. This is how they released their tension. They gave in to their urge after months or even years of resistance. A catathematic reaction. Catathemia is holding in emotions. Those who were mocked turned to sexual homicide or serial homicide as their way to grieve the insults. This is their way to prove themselves and take back the power they seemingly lost. People who were rejected go through a process of humiliation, and they may take this out on like subjects. The inability to be what someone else wanted them to be is a leading factor in a catathematic reaction. Emotional loneliness. Participants say they feel awkward or even socially unskilled, especially around those to whom they are attracted to. Because they are socially awkward, their approaches or comments may come off wrong or in an inappropriate way. Feeling detached is also related to low self confidence in social situations, which makes making new friends difficult and people detach further into their own world. Because they cannot express their feelings or talk about previous abuse, the only way they can disclose their feelings is through the same actions done to them. These actions are usually thought up first in fantasies. They are imprinted in their mind and come from the abuse they received in earlier life.